So this is a quick demo on using Firebase on server side. So if you look here, we are on the home page, and if we try to access dashboard, which is a private content, it did not render it, and it threw us back on the home page. To access it, we are going to click on login, and I'm using Firebase emulator here, so we are going to use this Firebase credentials to log in. So test at example.com. And once I log in, I'm logged into the dashboard. So let's see. So this is a quick overview of how this implementation is going to work. We are going to write a login component on Remix. Our browser is going to click on login or fetches for login route. Remix returns the form, and once user enters the username and password, we use Firebase to authenticate the user. And Firebase authentication is going to return this ID JWT token. Once it comes back to the browser, we send that request to a path called session, where we use and this is again a remix action form, where we use Firebase admin to confirm that the ID token which Firebase authentication has returned is valid. Once we verify that, we set cookie in the response header, send it back to the browser. And once browser has that, we look for this dashboard route, which is a Remix protected page. We validate whether the cookie we got in the request header is valid or not, and then we return the response. If we try to access without any cookie, we are thrown back to the home page. So let's get going. So you need to know how to set up FireAdmin SDK. I missed out while recording, but you need to download serviceaccount.json. So I'm going to start off by creating an index.tsx file, login index.tsx file in this particular route. I already have a Remix application running, and I'm connected to emulator. So to start off with, what I'm going to do is, I'll first of all, so let's do export and then a password. I have this. Let's stylize this now. So let's create a login function, and let's use username, email and password for Firebase email and password for authentication. So that's a pretty standard stuff. Email and password, pass auth, username and password. And once this is done, then we need to do something with the data, right? So we'll get the user, we need to do something over here. So the username and password, we'll create a state variable. And we'll set it over here. So that will be on change event. So let me do that quickly. So we need to import this. I have created a layout which you saw on the home page here. The same layout I'll be using. And let's initialize Firebase as well here. So we need this auth object. should be like what we'll do is get this from Firebase Auth, and then this we have done in the previous one as well. And we need this Firebase config. We get it from local path, and then we need this get auth, right? And what we are doing is we are going to use emulator to connect. So eventually our entire code should look something like this. So this is our login form, which allows us to log in. What we are doing here is once we are logged in, uh, we want to create a session, server-side session, and that we still need to code here. And whatever token we are getting from Firebase authentication, we are going to pass it to the session, and then create a session on the server side, which we are going to see up next. So next up, what I'm going to do is create a service here, which uh, will essentially do three things. One, create a session, then verify session, and maybe log out, right? So to do that, let's start with how to create session. But in this case, we are going to use Firebase to do that. So let's create a method called create user session. So export async. And I'm going to give a callback function where when something happens, we want to run that. So this will be admin. Sorry. So let's create Firebase admin stuff. So to do that, so here we are going to return. What we are going to do is from the admin, we'll get the auth, and then there is a method called create session cookie. So we are going to use that, and it needs a time. So we need to pass some options. So we'll say how long the session will be valid, that we are going to do here for now. So to do that, we'll get some arbitrary, let's say 1 day or 2 days or something like that. So expires in, right? And once this is done successfully, then we return the session token, session cookie, sorry, right? And we'll fire the function cb session cookie, right? So this is to create a user session, right? Next up, we want to verify whether the user is having valid session cookie or not. So to do that, let's create another function. So what we are doing here is we are grabbing the request header and looking for a header called cookie. So when we did this, what Firebase admin does is that it creates a, a cookie header in the response scope. So we'll see how that uh, how we are going to set it up, and then we'll. So in this function, we are going to validate. We want the user, every time user is making any interaction from the front end, in the request header, it would browser will take care of setting this cookie, and sending it back. So next thing that we need to do is we need to validate, we need to check this, right? That this cookie that we are getting from the browser is it valid or not? So to do that, we'll have something like, I'm just going to copy paste the code. It will be easier for me. So this is the third method which I'll be using further. So this require user ID. What we are going to do is get the user ID from the cookie scope. So uh, in this block of function where we were uh, creating the session cookie, it's actually just a jot token that gets set in the session. So once we debug, I'll show you what I mean, but bear with me till then. So here what we are doing is we are again using Firebase admin auth and we verify the cookie. So we are getting from this previous method get user session. So from header we get the cookie and then we verify. If everything is fine, we return the claim. So you'll get to see what it is. But if we don't find any cookie, then we are going to return it back. So right now, we still cannot use it because we need to actually log in from this form and hook it up. So next up, we'll see how to do that. So in this bit, we are going to create session.tsx. This is a remix action function that takes care of setting a cookie in the response header. And it gets invoked when the user is logged in using Firebase authentication. So this is the bit that we are going to code now. So what we are saying is that once user is logged in with username and password and Firebase authentication has authorized the user, we want to create a session. Whatever ID token that we get, we want to create session to. So we are going to use post method to do that. So first off, we create an action function. Let's import action function here. And then we are going to use the util that we created earlier. So if by default, we'll return that method is not allowed. And then if the action is post method, then we get the payload, whatever we are passing here, this ID token. And then we use this method defined in session server earlier. And what we are going to return is just a JSON. Actually, this will not be used, but we have to return some response in when Ajax call. When we are invoking this XHR call, we need to return something. So I'm just going to return back whatever ID token that I received. And I'm going to use the create user session from there. And so this create user session is actually uh, will return the cookie, right? So whatever cookie we are getting here, we are setting it uh, in the response header. So this will go as a response header. Next up, we are going to create a private route dashboard, which should be accessible only with cookie if the cookie is there in the request scope. So whatever cookie we are setting here in subsequent requests, that cookie should be automatically set by the browser. So let's see how we can do that. So we create this function, then create a div and some header. Next up, we create a loader function so that whenever this component gets loaded, uh, it should be accessible only if the session cookie is present. And I'm just loading up the session server, which has utility method, a required user ID. So we know that this particular thing, what it does is that it checks whether in the request scope we have the cookie header. So you'll see once I give the demo. So we'll just return the decoded claims. And in the component, first we check whether first we load this. So if everything goes fine, it will render the component. Otherwise, it should just redirect you to login page. So let's see. Okay, so this is my emulator, and if I go to my authentication, I have created this user. Let's look at the user. So test@example.com, password is password. I'm going to log in to my Remix app using this. This is Firebase emulator that I'm using. So test@example.com and password is password. So if you see, this is the dashboard that got rendered. We created this dashboard some time back, and uh, if I press this logout button, it goes here, and what it does is it invokes a logout route. If you look at the logout route, it just what it does is that it sets the cookie as null and then redirects back page to the home page. So if I click this, you would see that I'm logged out. So let's log in again, test at example.com, password, right? And if you look at the header here, so let me open login header. If you see here in the request header, we don't see any cookie. Cookie is null, which I've set here. And once I log in, you will see that cookie is set. So once I've logged in, uh, I'm on dashboard. So if you look at the dashboard here, you would see that this cookie has been set. And this cookie is nothing but a jot token set by Firebase. And that's about it. So once I click on logout, it comes here, uh, makes cookie as null, locks you out. So all this is happening on the server side. So this is not on the client side, unlike the previous video.